shattered pieces. The fluorescent lights of Wilson's pharmacy buzzed overhead, casting a harsh glow that seemed to highlight every worry line on Olivia Reed's face. She clutched the prescription paper in her hand so tightly it had become damp with sweat. The pharmacist's words echoed in her mind. $87.50. It might as well have been $1 million. I'm sorry, but is there maybe a generic version? Olivia asked, her voice barely above a whisper. She was acutely aware of the line forming behind her, of the $23 in her wallet, and of 8-year-old Thomas waiting in the car with a fever that hadn't broken for 3 days. The pharmacist shook his head sympathetically. This is the generic, Mrs. Reed. Your insurance denied the claim again. Olivia swallowed hard. 14 months since Daniel's accident. 14 months of fighting insurance companies, of selling furniture piece by piece, of explaining to Thomas why they couldn't live in their house anymore. 14 months of working night shifts, at the diner after a decade as a pediatric nurse. A career abandoned when Thomas's chronic respiratory condition required more attention than her shifts allowed. Could I maybe get just half the prescription? Her cheeks burned with humiliation. As the pharmacist began explaining why that wasn't possible, Olivia became aware of someone standing close behind her.
Too close!
She turned slightly to see a tall man in a weathered brown jacket, his dark hair peppered with gray, despite appearing to be in his early 40s. "Excuse me?" the man said, his voice unexpectedly gentle. I couldn't help overhearing. "Please let me help." Olivia immediately stiffened. "That's very kind, but we're fine." The man's eyes, a deep, calm brown, held no pity, only a quiet understanding that somehow made it worse. "I understand pride. Believe me," he said, keeping his voice low. "But if your child needs medicine, please let me do this. No strings attached." Before Olivia could protest further, he slid his credit card across the counter. "Please process the prescription," he told the pharmacist. "Sir, I can't accept—" Olivia began. "My name is Marcus." "Marcus Donovan," he said, offering a small smile that softened his weathered features. "And you don't have to accept anything. This isn't for you. It's for your son." Something in his tone silenced her objections. The genuine concern in his eyes lacked the condescension she'd grown accustomed to since becoming the widow with the sick kid. The pharmacist processed the payment, and Marcus stepped back, refusing the receipt. As the pharmacist bagged the medication, Olivia turned to thank Marcus properly, but he was already heading toward the exit. "Wait," she called after him, hurrying to catch up in the parking lot. "I don't know how to thank you, or how to pay you back." Marcus paused beside an old blue pickup truck. "There's no debt here, but if you really want to do something, there's a community center on Maple Street. They always need volunteers." He handed her a simple business card with just the center's name and address. Do you work there?" Olivia asked. "Sometimes," he answered cryptically. "Take care of your boy, Mrs. Reed." Olivia Reed. She extended her hand, which he shook briefly. "And my son is Thomas." "Thomas will be feeling better soon," Marcus said with certainty. Then, with a nod, he climbed into his truck and drove away. Olivia stood clutching the medication bag and the community center card, watching until his taillights disappeared around the corner. Something about the encounter left her unsettled in a way she couldn't identify, not fear or suspicion, but rather the uncomfortable sensation of having been truly seen after months of invisibility. When she returned to her car, Thomas was asleep in the back seat, his breathing still labored but his face peaceful. Olivia gently brushed damp hair from his forehead. "We got your medicine, sweetheart," she whispered, her throat tight. "Everything's going to be okay." But as she started the car, a 15-year-old sedan that protested with each ignition, she wondered if anything would ever truly be okay again. The weight of single parenthood, of poverty after middle-class stability, of watching her child struggle, it crushed her anew each morning. Yet as she drove home to their one-bedroom apartment, the card on the passenger seat seemed to offer something she hadn't felt in 14 months, the faintest glimmer of possibility. Invisible threads. 3 weeks after the pharmacy encounter, Olivia found herself standing before the weathered brick building on Maple Street. The sign, Riverview Community Center, was hand-painted in fading blue letters. Thomas had finally recovered enough to return to school, and Olivia had the rare luxury of a day off from the diner. She hesitated at the entrance, Marcus's card still in her wallet. Part of her had wanted to forget the encounter entirely. Charity always came with invisible strings, her mother had taught her. Yet something about Marcus Donovan had stayed with her, a quiet dignity that didn't match her experiences with do-gooders who needed to showcase their generosity. First-time volunteering? A cheerful woman with silver-streaked red hair approached, holding a stack of towels. "I'm Harriet, volunteer coordinator. You look like you're contemplating a jail sentence rather than community service." Olivia managed a smile. "That obvious?" "I'm Olivia Reed. I was told you might need help." "Honey, we always need help. Come on in. We've got the food pantry, after-school tutoring, job skills workshops, and the clinic. Any experience in those areas?" "I was a pediatric nurse for 10 years, Olivia admitted. It still hurt to use the past tense. Harriet's eyes brightened. "Well, praise the universe. Our Tuesday clinic volunteer just moved to Arizona. Dr. Jensen handles most things, but we need someone to take vitals, manage intake, and occasionally assist with basic procedures." Within an hour, Olivia found herself in a small but impressively equipped clinic room, organizing supplies with practiced ease. For the first time in over a year, her hands moved with confidence, muscle memory guiding her through tasks that had once defined her professional identity. "You're a natural," remarked Dr. Jensen, an older gentleman with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. "Our previous volunteer took months to learn the filing system." Olivia relaxed into the familiar rhythm of medical work, processing patients throughout the afternoon, mostly elderly individuals without transportation to larger facilities, parents with children needing school vaccinations, and the occasional homeless person requiring basic care. As evening approached, Harriet popped her head in. "Almost closing time, but the soup kitchen's starting up. Want to stay for dinner? It's a volunteer perk. Tuesday's beef stew is legendary." Olivia hesitated. Thomas was having dinner at a friend's house, a rare social invitation she'd gratefully accepted. "I suppose I could stay a little longer." The community center's cafeteria was already bustling with volunteers and community members when they arrived. Olivia was helping distribute bread rolls when she froze, nearly dropping her basket. Behind the serving counter, ladling stew with practiced efficiency, stood Marcus Donovan. He wore no uniform, just a simple apron over jeans and a flannel shirt, but he moved with the authority of someone in charge. "That's Marcus," Harriet whispered, noticing Olivia's reaction. "Heart and soul of this place, though he'd die before admitting it." "He paid for my son's medication a few weeks ago," Olivia explained. "I had no idea he ran this place," Harriet smiled. "Technically, he doesn't. On paper, he's just another volunteer. But the center was about to close 4 years ago when anonymous donations started arriving, right around the time Marcus showed up offering to cook Tuesday dinners." As the serving line progressed, Olivia found herself face-to-face with Marcus. Recognition flickered in his eyes, followed by genuine warmth. "Mrs. Reed," he acknowledged. "You came." "Olivia, please," she corrected. "And yes, my son's better now thanks to you." Marcus nodded, seeming pleased but uncomfortable with her gratitude. "I heard you were in the clinic today. Dr. Jensen says you're excellent." "You heard already?" "Small place? Small but mighty," he replied, a hint of pride in his voice as he gestured around the room. "Will you be coming back?" The question felt weighted with more significance than a simple inquiry about volunteering. Olivia studied him, the careful way he served each person, how community members greeted him by name, the lack of superiority in his manner despite clearly being a benefactor. "Yes," she decided aloud. "I think I will." After dinner, Olivia found herself helping in the kitchen, washing dishes alongside Marcus. Their conversation flowed surprisingly easily, focusing on the center's programs and community needs rather than personal matters. He asked thoughtful questions about her nursing background, never inquiring why she'd left the profession. As they finished cleaning, Marcus walked her to her car. The evening air carried the first hint of autumn, and Olivia pulled her cardigan tighter. "Thank you for coming today." Marcus said, hands in his pockets. The clinic has needed someone with your skills. It felt good, Olivia admitted. Using those skills again. Marcus nodded, understanding in his eyes. Sometimes the things we're meant to do find ways of pulling us back, even when life has other plans? Olivia asked, suddenly feeling the weight of all she'd lost. Especially then, he replied quietly. As she drove home, Olivia reflected on the day. For hours, she hadn't thought about bills or grief or the impossible task of raising Thomas alone. Instead, she'd felt purposeful, connected to something beyond survival. What struck her most was how Marcus operated, not as a flashy philanthropist seeking recognition, but as someone working alongside everyone else, hands equally calloused from labor. His truck had been parked next to luxury vehicles belonging to some of the other volunteers, its modest presence somehow more authentic. By the time she picked up Thomas, something had shifted inside her, a small realignment, like a bone knitting back into proper position after being broken. For the first time since Daniel's death, Olivia felt something beyond mere endurance, curiosity about what might come next. Weathering storms by mid-November, volunteering at the Riverview Center had become the cornerstone of Olivia's week. She'd taken on 2 regular shifts at the clinic, and Thomas often accompanied her, finding unexpected joy in the center's art program run by a retired schoolteacher named Eleanor. The routine had brought stability, emotionally, if not financially. Olivia still worked nights at the diner, still counted pennies for groceries, still woke gasping from nightmares where she couldn't provide for Thomas. But Tuesdays and Thursdays at the center had become sacred, a reminder of who she had been before tragedy rewrote her story. Her friendship with Marcus had developed slowly, built on shared work rather than personal disclosures. He remained something of an enigma, present at nearly every center function yet revealing little about himself. Olivia had gathered fragments. He lived alone in a converted warehouse apartment downtown. He traveled periodically for unnamed business. He had no family in the area but seemed to know everyone in town. What she knew with certainty was his uncompromising integrity and quiet compassion. Whether fixing the center's ancient plumbing or sitting patiently with Mr. Grayson, an elderly veteran who sometimes forgot what year it was, Marcus approached each task with the same careful attention. On a Thursday afternoon in late November, the sky darkened ominously as Olivia finished her clinic shift. Weather alerts had been buzzing on phones all day, a severe storm system approaching, potential for flooding along the river that bordered downtown. "You should head home early," Dr. Jensen advised, eyeing the blackening clouds. The river road floods quickly, but as Olivia gathered her belongings, Harriet burst into the clinic. "The basement's already taking on water, and we've got 15 seniors from the book club upstairs. City buses stopped running 10 minutes ago. What followed was organized chaos." Marcus appeared, somehow simultaneously coordinating volunteers, moving supplies to higher shelves, and arranging transportation for stranded community members. Olivia found herself working alongside him, her nursing instincts kicking in as they identified those with medical needs requiring priority evacuation. "Mrs. Winters needs her oxygen," Olivia told Marcus as rain pounded against the windows. "And Mr. Feldman is diabetic. He'll need food soon." Marcus nodded, already on his phone arranging for the fire department to prioritize these cases. When the evacuation vehicles arrived, Olivia helped load the most vulnerable residents, ignoring the rain soaking through her jacket. "That's everyone," she reported, returning to find Marcus securing windows against the howling wind. "Not quite," he replied. "You and I are still here, and the road to your apartment is already underwater according to police scanners." Reality sank in. She was stranded. Worse, Thomas was at Eleanor's house for art lessons across town from their apartment. "Thomas!" she gasped, panic rising. "I need to get to him." "Eleanor lives on the North Hill," Marcus said immediately. "Highest ground in town. I already checked. They're fine. No flooding there." He placed a steady hand on her shoulder. "Thomas is safe. I promise." The certainty in his voice calmed her momentarily until another realization hit. "But how will I get to him?" My car's too low to drive through floods. My truck can handle the water once it recedes a bit, Marcus said. For now, we need to wait. The center's on high enough ground to be safe. As evening fell, the storm intensified. They worked by flashlight after the power failed, moving furniture away from leaking windows and placing buckets under persistent drips. When they'd done all they could, they sat in the kitchen, warming themselves with coffee heated on the gas stove. Thomas will be worried, Olivia said softly. I had Harriet call Eleanor before she evacuated, Marcus replied. Thomas knows you're safe at the center. The thoughtfulness of this gesture, remembering her son's needs amid crisis, brought unexpected tears to Olivia's eyes. She blinked them away, embarrassed. Thank you, she managed. For thinking of him. Marcus nodded, his expression softening. That's what you do for people who matter. The simple statement hung in the air between them, laden with unspoken meaning. Why do you do all this, Marcus? Olivia finally asked the question that had lingered for months. The center? Helping strangers, living so modestly when you clearly could afford otherwise? Marcus was quiet for so long that Olivia thought he might not answer. When he finally spoke, his voice had a quality she hadn't heard before, a vulnerability beneath the calm exterior. I was born Marcus Donovan Harrington, he began. My family owns Harrington Shipping, the company that's run half the ports on the eastern seaboard for 4 generations. Olivia stared at him. The Harringtons were industrial royalty, their name attached to university buildings and hospital wings. I was the heir apparent, he continued, staring into his coffee. Harvard Business School, groomed to take over from my father. I never questioned the path until my sister Rachel got sick. His hands tightened around his mug. Lupus, complicated by infections. She needed specialized care, which of course we could afford. But during her hospital stays, Rachel became friends with her. Nurse's aide, a young mother named Justine, who was working 3 jobs to support her children after escaping an abusive marriage. The wind howled outside as Marcus's story unfolded. How Justine had died of pneumonia because she couldn't afford to miss work when sick. How Rachel had been devastated. How the Harrington family's response had been a token charitable donation rather than systemic change. Rachel never recovered, physically or emotionally, Marcus said. Before she died, she made me promise to do something that mattered. Not just write checks, but actually see the people who struggle invisibly all around us. He looked up at Olivia, his eyes reflecting the flashlight's glow. So I walked away, changed my name slightly, used my trust fund to set up anonymous foundations instead of buying vacation homes. My family disowned me, of course. Olivia absorbed this revelation, suddenly understanding the contradiction of Marcus, his evident education and resources alongside his commitment to simplicity. You don't regret it? She asked softly. Not for a moment, he replied without hesitation. Money never brought my family happiness, only isolation. Here, doing this work, I've found purpose. Community. His gaze held hers steadily across the table. And occasionally people who remind me why it all matters. The storm raged through the night. But inside the center's kitchen, something quieter and more profound was weathering a different kind of storm. The careful barriers both Olivia and Marcus had built around their wounded hearts. Foundation Spring arrived in a riot of renewal, painting the town with dogwood blossoms and daffodils, pushing through soil still compacted from winter storms. Nearly 5 months had passed since the night Olivia and Marcus had waited out the flood together, sharing stories and eventually making a treacherous journey to retrieve Thomas from Eleanor's hillside home. In those months, life had transformed in ways Olivia couldn't have imagined. Marcus had offered her a paid position managing the center's expanded medical services, allowing her to reduce her diner shifts to weekends only. Thomas's health had improved dramatically with consistent medication and the stress reduction that came with greater financial stability. Most unexpected was the careful, gradual evolution of her relationship with Marcus. It had begun with shared work, developed through crisis, and deepened through countless small moments. His patient chess games with Thomas, her discovery of his preference for spicy food, their mutual love of old jazz records. Nothing had been declared or defined, yet everything had changed. On a particularly beautiful April afternoon, Marcus invited Olivia and Thomas to help him with a special project, breaking ground for the center's community garden. As Thomas enthusiastically dug holes for tomato plants, Olivia and Marcus worked on constructing raised beds. "I received an interesting phone call yesterday," Marcus said, carefully aligning cedar boards. "From the Harrington Foundation." Olivia looked up sharply. "Your family?" "My father, specifically," he confirmed, his expression unreadable. "Apparently, he's been keeping tabs on the center's work. He's offering a substantial endowment, enough to renovate the entire building and expand programs for the next decade." "That's wonderful," Olivia said cautiously, sensing complication beneath the announcement. "It comes with conditions," Marcus continued, driving a screw with more force than necessary. "I would need to rejoin the family business in some capacity, take on a director role, at minimum, attend functions, use the Harrington name again." The implications settled between them like a physical presence. "Would you have to leave here?" Olivia asked, the question encompassing far more than geography. "Not entirely, but I couldn't be as involved day to day." Marcus set down his drill, meeting her eyes directly. "I need to consider it seriously. This funding could help hundreds of families like—" He stopped abruptly. "Like mine," Olivia finished quietly. Before they could continue, Thomas ran over, proudly displaying dirty hands and a worm he'd discovered. The adult conversation dissolved into laughter and hand-washing, the moment of tension temporarily suspended. That evening, after Thomas had gone to bed, Olivia sat alone in their small apartment, confronting emotions she'd carefully managed for months. Since Daniel's death, she'd reconstructed her life around self-sufficiency, emotional and practical independence born of necessity rather than choice. Marcus had somehow slipped past those defenses, becoming essential to both her and Thomas, without demanding recognition of that fact. The idea of him returning to his former world, of boardrooms and galas and family expectations, created an ache she hadn't anticipated. A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. Marcus stood outside, looking unusually uncertain. "I should have finished our conversation," he said when she invited him in. "About the foundation offer." They sat at her small kitchen table, the surface still bearing Thomas's homework papers and crayon marks despite her best cleaning efforts. "I built my life here deliberately," Marcus began, "away from wealth that insulates people from reality. My father doesn't understand that his money always comes with invisible control. But the center needs that funding," Olivia pointed out. "All those families need it." "At what cost, though?" Marcus countered. "If I compromise who I've become, how long before the work itself gets compromised?" Olivia studied him, this man who had chosen purpose over privilege, connection over comfort. "What does your heart tell you to do?" Marcus reached across the table, taking her hand in his. "That's why I'm here. My heart has become remarkably clear about its priorities." His fingers tightened gently around hers. "I spent years trying to honor Rachel's memory by helping strangers. I never expected to find a family in the process." The word family hung in the air between them, its implications unmistakable. "Marcus," Olivia began hesitantly, "Thomas and we come with complications, medical bills, a complicated history, my own trust issues. And I come with a disapproving family, an unconventional lifestyle, and a stubborn streak," he replied with a small smile. "Perhaps we're perfectly matched in our imperfections." They talked until midnight, discussing possibilities neither had dared voice before, of partnership, of shared purpose, of careful steps toward building something neither had expected to find again. As Marcus prepared to leave, he paused at the door. "I'll tell my father no, but I'm going to propose an alternative, a matching fund with no strings attached. If he truly cares about the community work, he'll accept those terms. And if he doesn't," Olivia asked, "then we'll find another way," Marcus replied with quiet certainty. "We always do." The kiss they shared then was gentle but definitive, a foundation stone being laid for whatever structure they might build together. Full circle, 5 years later, Olivia stood on the rooftop garden of the newly expanded Riverview Community Center, watching as sunset painted the horizon in vibrant oranges and pinks. Below, community members and volunteers mingled at the center's anniversary celebration, commemorating both its decade of service and the completion of renovations that had transformed the once struggling facility into a comprehensive resource hub. "Mom, Marcus says it's almost time for the presentation," Thomas called from the rooftop door. At 13, he'd grown tall and lanky, his previous health struggles visible only in the inhaler he still carried but rarely needed anymore. "I'll be right there," Olivia promised, taking a final moment to absorb the view. 5 years had brought changes she could never have anticipated that rainy day in Wilson's pharmacy. The Riverview Health Clinic, where she now served as director, provided comprehensive care to hundreds of uninsured families monthly. The Education Center offered certification programs that had helped dozens of community members secure living wage employment. The emergency response team they'd developed after the flood had become a model for other communities. And through it all, Marcus had remained steadfastly himself, generous without condescension, determined without domination, his quiet integrity unchanged by the eventual rapprochement with his father that had funded many of these expansions. The Harrington Reed Community Foundation, established with a combination of Harrington family funds and grassroots donations, operated with strict guidelines ensuring that assistance preserved dignity rather than creating dependency. It had been Olivia's insistence on the Reed inclusion that had finally convinced Marcus's father of her value, not as a charity case his son had rescued, but as an equal partner bringing essential perspective to philanthropic work. Downstairs in the main hall, Olivia found Marcus reviewing note cards, his reading glasses perched on his nose in a manner that still made her smile. His hair had more gray now, especially at the temples, but otherwise he remained unchanged, still preferring flannel shirts to business attire even at official functions. "Nervous?" she asked, straightening his collar affectionately. "Terrified," he admitted with a wry smile. "You know how I feel about public speaking." "You'll be magnificent," she assured him. "Just speak from the heart." Thomas appeared with a glass of water for Marcus, then hurried off to join Eleanor, who had become a surrogate grandmother to him. Watching them, Olivia felt a familiar swell of gratitude for the extended family they had built, not through blood, but through chosen connections. When Marcus took the podium minutes later, the room quieted respectfully. He thanked donors, recognized volunteers, and outlined plans for the coming year with his characteristic humility. But it was the conclusion of his speech that caught Olivia by surprise. "Community centers like Riverview are often described as safety nets," Marcus said, his voice gaining confidence. "But I've come to think of them differently. They're not just places people fall when they've exhausted all options. They're bridges, connecting people who might otherwise never meet, spanning the artificial divides of circumstance and status." His eyes found Olivia's in the crowd. 5 years ago, I witnessed a mother unable to afford medicine for her child, a woman who had given years of her life to caring for others as a nurse, yet found herself without care when she needed it most. That moment could have ended with a simple transaction, a prescription paid, a temporary problem solved. Instead, it became the first plank in a bridge that has supported not just one family but an entire community. Marcus gestured around the room. "Each of you has added to that bridge in your own way, and as we celebrate tonight, I'm honored to announce that the Riverview model will be expanding to 3 additional locations throughout the state next year, funded by the Harrington Reed Foundation's newest initiative." Applause erupted, but Marcus raised his hand for silence. "Before we continue celebrating, there's one more announcement I'd like to make, one of a more personal nature." He beckoned Olivia to join him at the podium. Confused but curious, she made her way forward, acutely aware of the community's eyes upon them. When she reached him, Marcus took her hand. "Olivia Reed changed my life by showing me what true strength looks like," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "She taught me that vulnerability isn't weakness, that accepting help doesn't diminish dignity, and that family can be built in the most unexpected circumstances." To Olivia's shock, Marcus knelt before her, producing a small wooden box from his pocket. "I thought about elaborate gestures or private moments for this," he said softly. though the microphone carried his words throughout the hushed room. But this community has been witness to every important step of our journey. It seemed fitting they should witness this one too. He opened the box to reveal not a diamond ring, but a simple band of twisting silver strands. These 5 strands represent our years together, he explained, intertwined but maintaining their individual strength, just like us. Olivia Reed, will you marry me, not just as my wife, but as my partner in everything that matters? Through tears, Olivia saw Thomas beaming from the front row, Eleanor sniffling beside him, Harriet giving an enthusiastic thumbs up. This room held every person who had mattered in their journey, from Dr. Jensen, who had first welcomed her to the clinic, to Marcus's father standing awkwardly but supportively near the back. Yes, she answered, her voice breaking. To all of it. Yes. Later that night, after celebrations had wound down and Thomas had gone home with Eleanor for a planned sleepover, Olivia and Marcus stood again on the rooftop garden. Stars had replaced the sunset, twinkling above a city that no longer felt like a place of struggle but of possibility. I never thought I'd find this again, Olivia admitted, leaning against him as they gazed upward. After Daniel died, I was so focused on survival that happiness seemed like an impossible luxury. And I never thought I'd find it at all, Marcus replied. I was so determined to honor Rachel through work that I forgot she would have wanted me to live fully too. Olivia twisted her new ring, watching how it caught the moonlight. Do you realize it's been exactly 5 years since that day at the pharmacy? Marcus nodded. I've never believed in coincidence. Some bridges are meant to be built, even if we don't recognize it when we're laying the first plank. Speaking of building, Olivia said, turning to face him, Thomas mentioned you've been teaching him about construction. Something about a treehouse? Marcus looked momentarily caught, then smiled. Actually, it's a bit more than a treehouse. I bought the property next to Eleanor's, the one with the big oak and the view of the river. I thought perhaps, for the 3 of us. If you wanted? A home? Olivia whispered, the word still carrying weight after years of apartment living. A home, Marcus confirmed. One we'll build together piece by piece. No rushing, no pressure. Just another bridge to construct. As they embraced under the stars, Olivia reflected on the journey that had brought them here, from a moment of desperate need to a partnership of equals. Their story hadn't followed any fairy tale script of rescue or romance. Instead, it had been built deliberately, thoughtfully, through shared purpose and mutual respect. Full circle, she thought, not back to where she had started, but to a place where past and future connected in ways she never could have imagined when life had shattered around her. The pieces hadn't simply been glued back together, they had been transformed into something entirely new, unexpected and beautiful in its imperfect strength.